A dying woman couldn't save her daughter. So she did the next best thing. She hid a journal under the floorboards and trusted that someday the right person would find it. 4 years later, her daughter sat in a root cellar with rope burns on her wrists, carving marks into a post just to remember what day it was. And somewhere above her, without knowing it, her mother's words were waiting, ready to become the weapon that changed everything. On this channel, we tell the stories the history books left out, the fierce, quiet love of mothers, the resilience of women who refused to be erased, and the strangers who showed up at exactly the right moment. What this story gives you: a reminder that the people who love us most often leave us gifts we don't find until we need them most. Hit subscribe, leave your city in the comments, and share this with someone who needs to know that even the darkest rooms have doors.
The rusty padlock on that cellar door was her father's heart turned to iron. Nettie heard his boots dragging through the dirt, a sound she knew meant trouble was coming. The door creaked open, and the sudden light felt like a slap. Harlan's voice cut through the dark. "You eat?" She stayed quiet. "I asked you a question." Her own voice was flat. "You left water and hardtack. I ate." Harlan stepped down, blocking the sun. Harlan. He smelled of whiskey and sweat as he put a tin plate on the floor. It held more hardtack and a tough little strip of dried beef. "Maeve Dunlap stopped by today," he said, watching her close. Nettie's head snapped up, and she hated herself for it. "What did she want?" she asked, trying to sound bored. "Asking about you like always. I told her you were sick with a fever again." He crouched down, his knees popping loud in the quiet. "She believed me. She always does." Nettie just stared. "She won't believe it forever," she said, her voice low. Harlan's hand shot out and grabbed her chin. It was not a punch, just a cold reminder of who was in charge. "She will believe what I tell her to. Do you understand me?" Nettie held his gaze, knowing that looking away only made it hurt more. "I understand," she whispered. He let go. "Good. There is one more paper I need you to sign." The word came out before she could stop it. "No." Harlan went real still. "What did you say?" Her voice was stronger this time. "I said no. I already signed over Mama's land. You got what you wanted." But his face wasn't angry. It was something much colder. "That deed was for the 40 acres, Harlan said slowly. "This other paper is for the water rights. Your mother was smart enough to file them separate." Nettie knew. "That is why I will not sign." He stared at her for a long moment, then just bent down, picked up the plate of food and walked out. The heavy padlock clicked shut, sealing her in the dark and the silence. She had been down there for 47 days, and she had about given up hope that anyone would ever come looking. But miles away, a good man was saddling his horse. Josiah Crane had been up before dawn. Since his wife Sarah passed, the early morning was the only time he felt any peace. He rode his horse, Slate, toward town to get some fencing wire from Dunlap's store. Maeve Dunlap was behind the counter when he walked in. "Morning, Josiah." "Maeve, I need 60 feet of fencing wire." Maeve nodded. "Levi's getting it now." She paused. "You happen to ride past the Calloway place?" Josiah shook his head. "Came the North Road. Why?" Maeve leaned on the counter, her face serious. "Something is wrong out there, Josiah. I have been by 3 times. Every time Harlan says Nettie is sick. He keeps changing his story." Josiah sighed. "Could be true, Maeve." "For 7 weeks?" Maeve's voice dropped. "I knew her mother, Ruth. That girl doesn't have a fever. She has a father who won't let her be seen." Josiah just wanted his wire. He did not want this trouble. "Maeve, I barely know the man." "But you knew Ruth," she said, and that stopped him cold. He remembered Ruth Calloway bringing him soup after his own wife's funeral. "Harlan is deep in gambling debt," Maeve said. "And Ruth left that girl land and valuable water rights. You do the math." Josiah looked at her. "What do you want me to do?" "You are heading south anyway. Just ride by. It is 2 miles off the main road. If it is nothing, I will give you the wire for free." She looked him square in the eye. "And if it is something, well, you're not the kind of man who can look away." Josiah put his hat back on. He had 100 reasons to say no, but he did not say any of them. He loaded the wire and rode south. The Calloway place looked sad and forgotten. The fence was leaning, and weeds had choked out what was once a fine garden. He pulled his horse to a stop and just listened. Then he heard it, a low sound coming from behind the house. He got off his horse and walked quiet around the side of the house. That is when he saw the root cellar. It had a heavy wooden door held shut by a big padlock. A padlock on a root cellar was just plain wrong. Josiah knelt by the door. "Hello?" he called out. A little shuffle came from inside, then a voice, thin as a whisper. "Who is there?" "My name is Josiah Crane. I am a neighbor from down south." There was a long pause. "Are you with my father?" "No, ma'am. Maeve Dunlap at the store asked me to check on you." A sound came through the wood that was half a laugh and half a cry. "Maeve sent you," she said. "My father is in town. He will not be back until sundown." Her voice got a little stronger, full of grit. "There is a padlock on this door." "I see it," Josiah said. "The key is hanging on a nail inside the kitchen, right above the stove." Josiah stood up. He walked right to the kitchen door, found it unlocked, and saw the key just where she said it would be. He walked back, put the key in the lock, and turned it. The lock snapped open. When he lifted that heavy door, he saw her. She was pale and thin, sitting on the dirt floor, with old scars on her wrists, but her eyes were strong, freedom had finally arrived. Her dress was the one he must have thrown her in the cellar with, all faded and ripped at the bottom, but her eyes were sharp. That is what he would recall later. She looked like she had been through a storm, but those eyes were as clear as a summer sky. He asked, "Can you get on your feet?" She answered by rising on her own, steadying herself against the wall with just one hand. He wanted me broken, but I was not going to give him the satisfaction. Josiah held out his hand. She stared at it a good long while before taking it. Her grip felt stronger than he reckoned it would be. "I need to tell you something before we go," Nettie said, stepping out into the bright sun. She flinched from the light. "My father made me sign a deed for my mother's land. He locked me down there and swore I would not see daylight again until I signed." "Did you sign it?" Josiah asked. "I signed away the land," she said, looking him square in the eye. "But I did not sign away the water rights. That is why he kept me down there. He will tell you I'm sick in the head. He will tell everyone I'm unstable, and folks will believe him because it is easier to believe a man than a locked door." Josiah saw she was not asking for his pity. She was showing him the field of battle. "You know how to ride a horse?" he asked. "I can ride." "Then we are leaving this place." He helped her up onto his horse, Slate, then climbed on behind her. The horse shifted a bit but held steady under their weight. As they turned toward the main road, Nettie spoke. "He will come looking for me." Her voice was steady, but he could feel the tension in her back against his chest. "I reckon he will," Josiah said. "He has friends, men who owe him favors." "I reckon that too." "Then why are you doing this for me?" Josiah stayed quiet for a moment, the sound of Slate's hooves marking time on the road. "Because I failed to help someone once before," he said finally, "and she ended up buried in a field with no name to mark her place." Nettie did not say a thing. She did not have to. When they arrived at his ranch, he helped her down and gave her some water from the well. "You will take the house," he told her. "I will sleep in the barn." "You do not have to do that." "I know I do not. I am telling you how it will be." He paused. "There is a lock on the bedroom door. It fastens from the inside. The key is on the dresser. You keep it." Something in her expression changed then. It was not just thanks. It was the look of someone who realized a man had thought of her safety before she even had to ask. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "Do not thank me yet. When your father learns where you are, things are bound to get harder before they get easier." She took the cup back to the well and looked out toward the far hills. "There is something else," she said. "Those water rights my mother filed. They are not just valuable. They control the water for 3 ranches downstream. That includes Judge Puit's land." She turned to face him. "My father did not just want the money. He wanted power over the judge, power over the very men who could send him to jail." Josiah let the weight of that settle in. If her father controlled the water, he controlled who in the whole valley got to prosper and who did not. Nettie's voice was as solid as a rock. "That is why he locked me in a cellar for 47 days. I am the only one standing between him and that kind of power." Josiah looked at her, standing there in her torn dress with marks on her wrists, and he understood. This was not just about saving a girl. This was the start of a war, and this young woman was not a victim. She was a soldier. "We will need Maeve," he said, "and we will need to get the sheriff involved. We need proof that you signed that paper against your will." "My mother kept a journal," Nettie said. "She wrote about my father, about his drinking and the man he became." "Where is it?" "Hidden. Under the floor in my old room. He has no idea it exists. Your mother was smart to hide it." Nettie shook her head. "I hid it 3 years ago. I saw the man he was turning into." Josiah just stared at her. She was only 22 years old. "You knew this day was coming," he said quietly. "I prayed it would not," she answered. She sat on the porch step, and for the first time she looked tired down to her bones. "But my mother always taught me to hope for the best, but prepare for a man at his worst." The sun was sinking low, stretching long shadows across the yard. Josiah sat on the step near her, but kept a respectful distance. "First thing tomorrow I will ride to Abilene and find Maeve," he said. "She will know who in town has backbone. Then we will see Sheriff Briggs. Briggs plays cards with my father." "I know that," Josiah said, "which means he will have to pretend to be on our side, at least in public. A daughter locked in a cellar with rope marks on her arms does not look good for anyone." Nettie looked down at her wrists, rubbing them without thinking. "He will say I did it to myself, that it is part of my condition." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Did you?" "No." "Then we will let the marks tell their own story." A coyote howled in the distance, and another answered back. Nettie flinched at the sound, a quick, sharp movement like someone used to sudden noises, meaning trouble was coming. Josiah saw it, but did not say a word. "Are you hungry?" he asked instead. "Starving." He went inside and returned with bread, salted pork, and a jar of peach preserves his late wife Sarah had made. He had never found a reason to open it until now. Nettie ate slowly with purpose, like a person learning to trust food again. She did not talk about the cellar. She talked about her mother. "She was the strongest woman I ever knew," Nettie said. "She married my father when he was a good man before the war changed him. She stayed because she believed he could change back." Nettie looked away. She was wrong about that, but not about much else. What was she right about? That land is the only thing a woman can truly own for herself. That is why she put those water rights in her name. She saw what he was becoming. Josiah poured her more water. "Your mother, Ruth, was a fine woman. She brought me a pot of soup after my wife passed. She just sat on this porch with me for an hour, did not say a thing. It was the most comfort I had all year." A small, quick smile touched Nettie's lips. "That sounds just like her." They sat in a comfortable quiet for a while. Then Nettie's voice turned hard. "My father will be home by now. He will see the cellar is open. He will not come tonight. He will drink first. He always does. But by morning, he will have his story ready to tell. He'll spin a tale that makes him the wronged father and me the wayward daughter. By the time he reaches Abilene, half the town will be pitying poor Harlan Calloway. He will come here, likely not by himself, carrying papers instead of swinging fists. He figured out years ago that ink leaves a deeper bruise than a knuckle. Josiah leaned forward. Then we had better have our own papers ready. The journal, Nettie said softly. The journal. She looked at his ranch. Why did Maeve send you? I think I know, she said, her eyes meeting his. She sent you because you are the one man in this county who has already lost someone he could not save. Maeve knew you would not walk away a second time. A knot formed in Josiah's chest. He kept quiet because she was right, and saying it out loud would make it too heavy to carry. Get some rest, he said. Lock the door. I will be in the barn. At the door, she stopped. Josiah. For 47 days, I counted. I told myself someone would come. I was not a fool for hoping. He heard the lock click from inside and stood on that porch for a long while. He watched the road leading back to Abilene, knowing Harlan Calloway was out there, staring into a vacant cellar and making his plans. The summer air was thick and dead still. Josiah went to the barn and lay on the straw. Sleep would not come easy, but tomorrow the fight would start. At first light, footsteps on the porch sent him grabbing for his rifle. "It is me," Nettie called. "I made coffee." He lowered the gun, letting out a breath. Stepping outside, he found her with 2 tin cups. In the daylight, she still looked thin, but she stood a little straighter. "You sleep any?" he asked. "Some," she answered. "More than in weeks. That lock on the door surely did help." Josiah sipped the coffee. It was strong enough to peel paint, but he did not say a word. "We need to ride to Abilene this morning. We will see Maeve first, then the sheriff. Briggs will not help us. Maybe not, but he needs to know on record. Otherwise, your father controls the story." Nettie clutched her cup. "There is something else. My father holds Sheriff Briggs's marker for $300 from a card game. Briggs cannot pay it, so my father just holds on to the paper. You understand? The sheriff owes my father whatever he asks." Josiah's jaw tightened. The whole mess had just gotten heavier. "All right," he said. "We start with Maeve. She will know who else we can trust. There is Judge Puit. My father has a hold on his water supply." "Not yet," she said. "The water rights are still in my name." "My mother was smart, Josiah. She filed those rights separate from the land deed on purpose. She was building a wall between him and the water." They drank their coffee in silence. Josiah then saddled his horse, Slate, and a mare named Copper. He helped Nettie up, and they rode toward Abilene. The ride was quiet, taking just over an hour. Nettie rode well, her eyes scanning the road ahead, watching for dust, watching for her father. They reached Dunlap's general store as the town was waking. Maeve was on the front steps with a broom. She saw them, set the broom down, and put both hands on her hips. "Well now," Maeve said as they dismounted, "I see you found more than fencing wire." "Maeve," Josiah began, but she was looking past him at Nettie. Her eyes locked on the girl's rope-scarred wrists. Maeve's expression hardened. "Get inside," she said. "Both of you, now." She bolted the store door behind them. A tall young man, Levi, came down from the stockroom and stopped cold when he saw Nettie. "Levi, put water on to boil," Maeve ordered, "and bring the medical kit." "I am all right," Nettie said. "No, you're not. No, you are standing here looking like you crawled out of the earth, and I am going to clean those wrists before another word is spoken. Sit down." Nettie sat, not out of obedience, but because Maeve Dunlap was the kind of woman you did not argue with. Levi brought the water and kit, his jaw tight with anger. Maeve worked quietly, cleaning the raw rope burns with a gentleness that defied the fury in her eyes. "How long?" she asked without looking up. 47 days, Nettie said. "The root cellar. Padlocked." Maeve's hands stopped for a second. "I went to that house 3 times. He stood in the doorway and fed me lies." Her voice hitched. He is a convincing man. He did not convince me, Maeve said. I just did not push hard enough. Levi spoke up from the counter. What do you need? He was asking Nettie. I need the sheriff to know, she said. I need the deed transfer looked at, and I need my mother's journal from under the floorboards at the house. A journal? Maeve asked. My mother kept a record of everything from when my father started drinking. She wrote down his threats, his actions. I hid it 3 years ago before he could burn it. Ruth was building a case, Maeve whispered. The room was still. We know Briggs will not help, Maeve said. Harlan has him on a leash. Judge Puit is a fair man, Josiah said. If we show him that journal, he will listen. But we need to get it before Harlan realizes it is there. I will go, Nettie announced. No, Josiah and Maeve said at once. He will be watching the house, expecting you, Josiah told her. You cannot just tear up the floor. I know exactly which board to lift, she replied. I have done it 100 times in the dark. She is right, Levi said quietly, and everyone turned to look at him. She is the only one who knows where it is, but she does not have to go alone. I will go with her, Josiah insisted. No, Maeve said, holding up a hand. If Harlan sees you on his land after this, he will twist it. He will claim you are trespassing, and Sheriff Briggs will be right there to back him up. You have to stay clean. Go see Judge Puit. Tell him everything you found out and get it on the record. Then who is going with Nettie? I am, Levi spoke up. Maeve studied her son for a long moment, but whatever she saw in his eyes settled the matter. She nodded once. Go along the creek bed. Harlan watches the road, not the water. Nettie got to her feet. The clean white bandages on her wrists made the bruises on her face look even worse. She looked at Levi. Are you sure about this? My mother felt guilty for 3 years because she did not break down your father's door. I will not spend the next 3 years feeling the same way. They slipped out the back of the store. Josiah watched them leave, then looked back at Maeve. He is so young. He is 25, she replied. That is old enough to know right from wrong, and it is young enough to still do something about it. Maeve untied her apron. Judge Puit eats his lunch at the hotel at noon sharp. You can catch him there. Make sure you tell him about the rope burns before Harlan tells him about any gambling debts. Josiah hesitated. Maeve, what if this goes wrong? If this goes wrong, a young woman who spent 47 days in a dark hole goes right back to the man who put her there. That is not happening, Josiah. Not in my town. The 20-minute ride gave Josiah just enough time to figure out what he was going to say. Judge Puit was a man who valued precision. He had no time for emotions or tears in his courtroom. He wanted facts, papers, and the law. Josiah had no papers. He had rope burns on a young woman's wrists, a locked cellar, and the word of a 22-year-old girl against her own father. He found Puit right where Maeve said he would be, at a corner table with a plate of roast beef. Samuel Puit was 60 years old, with a neat white beard and eyes that had seen every kind of lie a man could tell. Judge Puit. The judge looked up. Mr. Crane, I do not believe we have any business. We do now, sir. Then sit, but make it quick. Josiah sat and laid out the facts plain and simple. He spoke of the cellar, the heavy padlock, the angry rope marks, and the 47 days. He told him about the land deed she signed under threat, and the water rights Harlan was trying to steal. Puit listened without a word, cutting his beef into perfect squares and eating them one by one. When Josiah was finished, Puit placed his fork down and carefully wiped his mouth. Are you telling me that Harlan Calloway locked his own adult daughter in a root cellar to force her to sign over property? Yes, sir. And this property includes water rights that were filed by his late wife, Ruth Calloway. Yes, sir. Water rights that, if I recall correctly, provide irrigation for several farms downstream. Puit paused, including my own. Yes, sir. The judge folded his napkin. That is a clear conflict of interest, Mr. Crane. Do you understand that? I do. But I had to tell you because the other option is that girl goes back into the cellar. Has anyone filed a complaint with the sheriff? Not yet. Sheriff Briggs owes Harlan a gambling marker for $300. Puit's eyes sharpened. Are you certain of that? The girl told me. She has been listening through cellar walls for 47 days. She knows things her father has no idea she knows. Puit leaned back, quiet for a long moment. I cannot rule on a land dispute that affects my own property, but I can send the case to the circuit judge in Selena. I can also issue a temporary order to stop any transfer of property until this is reviewed. How soon? I can write it up this afternoon. And her imprisonment, that is a criminal matter for the sheriff. If Briggs will not do his job, then the United States Marshal will. Josiah nodded. There is one more thing. The girl's mother kept a journal. It has detailed records of his abuse going back for years. They are getting it right now. From where? From the Calloway house. Puit raised an eyebrow. That is a bold move, the girl insisted. I am sure she did. Puit picked his fork back up. Bring me that journal, Mr. Crane. And bring me the girl. I need to hear this story from her directly. He ate a piece of beef. I have known Harlan Calloway for 15 years. I have watched him change since the war. I always figured it was his own business. It appears I was wrong. Josiah stood up. Thank you, Judge. Do not thank me. I am just doing my job. Someone should have made me do it a long time ago. Josiah left the hotel, a bad feeling settling deep in his gut. He knew Maeve had told him to stay away, but he could not shake the feeling that he had sent someone else to fight a battle that should have been his. He was still a mile away when he heard the shouting. The Calloway house appeared, and Josiah saw Harlan on the porch with a shotgun. Levi was in the yard with his hands raised. Behind him, Nettie clutched a leather book to her chest. They had the journal, but Harlan had them. That is my property, Harlan yelled, pointing at the journal. She is stealing from me, from my own house. She is taking what belonged to her mother, Levi said, his voice steady. Put the gun down, Mr. Calloway. You are Maeve Dunlap's boy. I should have known. Your mother has been sniffing around my business all summer. Get off my land, not without Nettie. Harlan snapped the shotgun shut. Levi did not move, but his hands trembled slightly. Father, Nettie said, stepping out from behind Levi. Harlan's eyes locked onto her. It was not anger on his face, it was ownership. You come home now, he said, his voice dropping low and dangerous. You come home and we can forget all about this. I will even unlock the cellar. You can sleep in your old room. You will unlock the cellar, Nettie repeated. Do you hear yourself? You say that like it is some great kindness, like 47 days in the ground can be fixed with one night in a bed. I was keeping you safe. You kept me a prisoner. Harlan's voice cracked. Do you think this world is kind? Do you think these people care about you? They will use you up. I am the only one who... You chained me. You starved me. You made me sign away Mama's land while I was sitting in the dark. That land is family land. Mama left it to me. To me, not you. The air was tight with tension. Harlan took a step off the porch. At that moment, Josiah rode into the yard. He stopped his horse right between Harlan and the others. He did not say a word, just let his presence fill the space. Harlan? Josiah finally said. You, Harlan snarled. You are the one who took her. I opened a locked door and helped a woman walk out of it, Josiah corrected him. There is a difference. That girl is my child. She is 22 years old, Harlan, not a child. She is a landowner whose own father made her sign a crooked deed. Crooked? Harlan's laugh was sharp and ugly. She signed it of her own free will. You can ask anybody. I aim to ask Judge Puit. He is waiting on us this afternoon. The judge's name struck Harlan hard. His face turned pale, then dark with anger. Puit has no business here. He does when those water rights feed his own ranch. He is already writing up an order to stop all property deals. Harlan's hand tightened on his shotgun. You do not know what you are doing, Crane. You are just a hired hand. I know what 47 scratches on a cellar post mean. I know what rope burns on a young woman's wrists look like, and I know a judge who cares about evidence will want to see a mother's journal. Harlan's eyes locked on the book in Nettie's arms. Where did you get that? Ruth did not. Every single day, Father, Nettie said. She wrote down every threat, every bruise. She put a date on it. She named the folks who saw. And she hid it where you would never dream of looking. Harlan's arm went limp, the shotgun hanging useless. For a second, Josiah saw the man he might have been before the liquor and the bitterness broke him. "Give me the book," Harlan said, but his voice had no power left. "Please, Nettie, you stopped being my father the first night you locked that cellar door and left me screaming." Harlan's chin shook. He looked from Josiah to Levi and then back to Nettie, 3 people standing in the way of his control. "This is not over," he said. "You are right," Nettie told him. "But the part where I do what you say is done for good." Josiah helped Nettie onto the horse behind him. Levi got on his own horse. Harlan just stood in his yard watching them ride off. For the first time in 47 days, Nettie did not look back. They rode toward Abilene in a quiet that was not about fear. It was the quiet of folks getting ready for a fight that would change their lives. Maeve was waiting by the store. She saw the book in Nettie's hands. "Ruth's journal," she whispered. "Every last page," Nettie said. "Puit is expecting us," Josiah added. Maeve turned to Levi. "What happened out there?" "Harlan had a shotgun. He did not use it." Maeve looked at her son for a long moment, then gave him a quick, hard hug. The kind that says what a mother cannot say out loud. After a few seconds, Levi stepped away. "Let us go see the judge," he said. The 4 of them walked toward the hotel. Josiah and Nettie in front with Maeve and Levi just behind. Folks took notice. In a town like Abilene, 4 people walking with purpose at high noon is a loud affair. A man named Carl Ducker, who drank with Harlan on Saturdays, watched them go by. He did not say a word, but Josiah saw him turn and head toward the saloon. "Well, we just lost our element of surprise," Josiah said quietly. "We never had it," Nettie replied. "In this town, folks know everything before it happens." They found Judge Puit in his room, already working on the court order. He stood up when they came in, his eyes finding Nettie right away. "Miss Calloway, sit down. I have some questions and I will need honest answers. Can you do that?" "Sir, I have been honest my whole life. It is why I spent 47 days in the ground." The judge studied her for a moment, then sat down. "Start at the beginning," he said. For 40 minutes, Nettie told him everything. She did not cry or hesitate. She talked about the first night in the cellar, the rope on her wrists, and the meals that became fewer and fewer. She told him about the property deed he made her sign on day 12 and the water rights paper she refused to sign on day 30. She described making a scratch on the post for each day with her own fingernail. The judge wrote it all down. When she was done, he asked to see the journal. Nettie gave it to him. He read the first page and then closed the book. He noted that every entry was dated and named people still living in Abilene. "I will need to speak with them," the judge said, placing the journal on his desk. "Miss Calloway, I am issuing an order against your father. He cannot come near you, the Crane Ranch, or the Dunlap store. The deed is frozen until a circuit judge can hear the whole story. I will also tell Sheriff Briggs to handle the criminal charges. But I need to warn you, Miss Calloway, your father is going to fight this. It will not be easy. Pain is 47 days in a dark cellar," Nettie said. "This is just paperwork." Judge Puit almost cracked a smile. "You sure do sound like your mother." "I will take that as a high compliment, sir." They left the hotel and started walking. Maeve stayed close to Nettie, one hand on her arm, keeping her steady. Levi walked on her other side. Josiah followed a step behind, watching the street. They were almost to the store when Sheriff Briggs stepped out from an alley. He blocked their path with his arms crossed. "Miss Calloway," he said, "your father came to me this morning. He says you were taken from his house against your will." "Against his will," Nettie corrected him. "Not mine." The sheriff shifted his weight. "He says you have not been well. He says a lot of things." "Did he mention the padlock on his cellar door?" Nettie held up her bandaged wrists. "Did he tell you about the 47 days, Sheriff?" Briggs glanced at her wrists. "I have to hear both sides of the story. Then you can hear my side right now." "This is not the right place for it. Judge Puit thought it was. He is issuing a restraining order. So you can either take my statement now, or you can explain to a circuit judge in Selena why you refuse to." The sheriff's face changed colors. He looked at Josiah. "You started this." "I just opened a door," Josiah said. A locked cellar is not a family matter. It is a crime. People all up and down the street were watching. "Come to my office," Briggs finally said. "I will take the statement." "And make the arrest?" Maeve asked. He did not answer. Inside his office, Nettie told her story one more time. When she finished, Briggs rubbed his face. "I will ride out to the Calloway place tonight," he said. "To arrest him?" Nettie asked. Briggs looked at her. "To talk to him." "Talk." Nettie's voice was cold. "You are going to talk to him. I need to hear his side. You already did. Play cards with him every Saturday." The room fell silent. Sheriff Briggs's face turned hard as rock. "That has nothing to do with this." $300 says it does. Briggs shot up from his chair, sending it banging against the wall. "You watch your mouth, girl." Josiah took a single step forward. It was just enough. "She is a witness giving a statement in your office, Sheriff. You ought to remember that." Briggs glared at Josiah for a long moment before sinking back into his seat. He straightened the paper and grumbled, "I will write it out tonight." They left the office into the low orange sun that stretched long shadows across the main street. Nettie was the last one out. She stopped dead on the boardwalk. Across the road stood Harlan Calloway. He was not drunk or angry. He was clean-shaven, wearing a good coat, and standing next to a man in a suit Josiah had never seen. "That is Emmett Slade," Maeve whispered. "A lawyer from Selena. Harlan already had an attorney." Harlan looked straight at Nettie. He gave a tiny tip of his hat, then turned and walked into the saloon with Slade. The four of them were left standing there, realizing Harlan Calloway had been playing a much bigger game all along. Nettie's hands balled into fists, her bandaged wrists a stark white in the dimming light. "He is not fighting like a drunk anymore," she said, her voice low. "No," Josiah agreed. "He is not." Emmett Slade worked quicker than a prairie fire. By the next morning, a new story was all over Abilene. Harlan Calloway was a wronged father and a war hero, pushed too far by a daughter who had become unstable after her mother died. Josiah heard it all from Pete Holm, a young man from the livery, before he even finished his first coffee. "Folks are talking, Mr. Crane," Pete said, shuffling his feet. "Mr. Slade was in the saloon last night buying drinks and telling everyone how Harlan has been trying to get his daughter help. He says she hurts her own wrists and locks herself in closets, and people are believing it." Pete looked down at the dirt. "Some are. It is an easier story to swallow." Josiah paid the boy and went to the barn. Nettie was brushing copper, her hands needing to be busy to keep her mind steady. "Slade has already started," Josiah said. "I know. I heard Pete." She kept brushing. "He is telling them I am crazy. It is the same story my father has been telling for years. Slade just put it in a fancy suit." She leaned against the horse. "How did Pete look when he told you?" "Uncomfortable. That means he halfway believes it. Now imagine every man in town who would rather believe a father over a daughter. That is Slade's jury." Josiah leaned on the stall. "Puit's order is official. The property transfer is frozen." "That will not stop Slade," Nettie said. "He will just move the whole thing to a judge in Selena who has never met any of us. You think Slade is that good? My father hired him for a reason. Harlan is a drunk, but he's not a stupid man. That is what makes him so dangerous." Josiah watched her, realizing she had been thinking like this, 3 steps ahead, for years. "What is our move?" "We get to the people in that journal before Slade does. Dr. Hensley, Reverend Pike, our neighbor Mrs. Aldrich. They all saw things. If Slade gets to them first and scares them into silence, this journal is just a dead woman's words against a lawyer. Then we ride now." Nettie shook her head. "Not we, me and Maeve. Dr. Hensley will not talk about this with a man. He needs to hear it from a woman. So he feels like he can still do the right thing." Josiah did not like it, but he knew she was right. "What about me?" "Go find Judge Puit. Tell him Slade is already poisoning the town against me. We have to get the hearing moved up." They rode to Abilene together, then split up. Nettie and Maeve went to find the doctor, while Josiah went to the hotel where the judge was staying. He found Puit's door locked with a note pinned to it. It read, "Court business in Selena. Return Thursday." Thursday was 4 days away. Josiah felt the world shift beneath his feet. Puit was gone, Slade was hard at work, and Harlan Calloway had 4 days to do as he pleased. He rode quickly to Maeve's store. Nettie and Maeve were inside, bent over the journal. "Puit has gone to Selena," Josiah said. Nettie's head shot up. The note said he would be back Thursday. "That is no accident," she said, looking at Maeve. "Slade pulled Puit out of town on purpose. All he needed was to file a motion, any motion, to buy himself 4 days. 4 days, Nettie repeated, her hands flat on the counter. "That is all he needs." "For what?" Josiah asked. "To build a case that I am incompetent. If Slade can get a doctor to declare me mentally unfit before a hearing, the land transfer is final. My signature is valid, and my story becomes the ravings of a crazy girl." The room felt cold. "He cannot get a doctor to lie like that," Maeve said. "Hensley knows you. Slade does not need Hensley. He just needs any doctor from Selena or Topeka willing to sign a paper for the right price." "That is corruption," Levi said. "That is Kansas," Nettie replied. Maeve stood up straight. "Then we do not wait. We go to the witnesses right now and get their statements in writing before Slade can get to them." Nettie nodded. "Dr. Hensley first." "I will go with you," Maeve said. "Josiah, you and Levi go find Mrs. Aldrich. She is old and scared, but she heard what she heard." They split up and headed out. Nettie and Maeve walked to Dr. Hensley's office, which was upstairs from the apothecary. Nettie knocked on the door. A moment later, it opened. Dr. Hensley was a thin man with glasses who looked like he spent his life bent over books. The doctor looked at Nettie, and his face was a quick storm of surprise and then pure dread. Nettie Calloway. She met his gaze head on. "Dr. Hensley, may we come inside?" He hesitated for just a moment too long. Inside, he tried to make small talk. "I heard you were staying with Josiah Crane." Nettie cut right through it. "My father locked me in a root cellar for 47 days. She held up her bandaged wrists. "These are not from some sickness. They are from a rope and an iron ring." Hensley stared at them. "I treated your mother once." Nettie's voice was like steel. "You knew she did not fall, but you wrote it down that way." Maeve stepped forward. "We need a statement, Thomas. What you saw with Ruth. Your professional opinion." "Writing that means calling Harlan Calloway a liar," he worried. "Not writing it," Maeve said, "means a girl goes back to a cellar." "Ruth is gone," Maeve pushed. "Nettie is alive. Choose who you can still help." That was all it took. The doctor sat down and picked up his pen. "The injuries were not consistent with falls," he said, ready to write down the dates and details. Meanwhile, Josiah and Levi were knocking on Mrs. Aldrich's door. The old woman, all of 72 years, knew who they were right away. "You are Maeve's boy," she said, looking straight at Josiah. Then to Levi, "Did your mother send you about Nettie?" "Yes, ma'am," they both said. Mrs. Aldrich opened the door wide. "I was wondering when someone would finally ask." "In her little sitting room," she confessed. "I heard her screaming the very first night. I told myself it was just an animal for 47 nights straight because I was old and scared." Tears streamed down her face. "What do you need?" "A written statement," Josiah said, "telling what you heard and for how long." "I will write it," she said, her voice firm. "I will sign it and I will swear on it." "I owe that girl that much," Mrs. Aldrich said, "and I owe her mother more." By noon, they had 3 statements. The third came from Reverend Pike. His was short but powerful. He had seen Harlan strike Ruth 2 years ago right at the dinner table. He never reported it. He just prayed on it. When Maeve told her, Nettie's jaw was set tight. "He watched my father hit my mother and all he did was pray?" "He is willing to testify now," Maeve offered gently. "Because it is safe. He does not have to stand alone." "I am not grateful," Nettie said, folding the papers. "They all watched us fall apart and chose comfort over doing right." Maeve's voice was quiet. "Late courage is still courage, Nettie." "Tell that to my mother," she replied. The silence was heavy. Back at the store, the four of them spread the journal and the 3 statements across the counter. Her life depended on the words on those pages. "We have enough to take to the judge in Selena," Nettie announced. "But we have to beat Slade before he files to have me declared incompetent." "How do we know he has not already?" Levi asked. "He needs a doctor's signature," she explained. "That takes at least a couple of days. But my father is smart. He has already sent Slade with instructions. They will declare me unfit, without ever even looking at me." "They can do that?" Levi was stunned. "It is a loophole," Nettie said. "Family testimony is enough." Maeve slammed her hand on the counter. "Then we drive our own wagon through it. We will file these statements ourselves and demand they use a doctor of our choosing." "Can we even do that?" Josiah asked. "I do not know," Nettie admitted. "But showing up with proof is better than waiting for some stranger to decide my mind is broken." "Then we ride for Selena tomorrow," Josiah declared. "No," Nettie corrected him. "We ride tonight." Josiah saw the fire in her eyes, the same thing that helped her count 47 days on a post without breaking. "Tonight," he agreed. For the next 2 hours, they moved with purpose. Maeve packed food, Levi checked the horses, and Josiah loaded up the wagon. But Nettie sat at the counter and wrote. It was not a letter. It was a list. She wrote down every single name, date, and gambling debt her father owed. She had been a prisoner, but she had been listening. "How do you know all this?" Josiah asked, watching her. "My father talks to himself when he is drinking," she said. "He would sit right above the cellar, going over his debts out loud. I could not write them down then, so I memorized every last one." She finally put the pen down. "He thought that cellar made me helpless. He had no idea it was making me dangerous." Maeve came out with a bag. "What is that?" "Insurance," Nettie said. They left Abilene as the sun went down. Josiah and Nettie in the wagon, Maeve and Levi on horseback behind them. The road to Selena was 40 hard miles, and they pushed on through the night. About 3 hours in, Levi rode up to the wagon. "Got a rider behind us about a half-mile back." "How many?" Josiah asked, not turning around. "Just one," Levi reported. "He is matching our speed." Nettie's hands gripped the wagon seat. "My father would not come by himself." "It is not him," Levi said. "Horse is too small." "Slade," Josiah figured. "Or someone he sent." Josiah pulled the wagon to a halt, and the rider behind them stopped too. In the flat, starry dark, the silhouette was plain to see. "We keep moving," Nettie said, her voice steady. "Let him follow. Let Slade know we are coming. I would rather face a man who is ready for me than sneak around like I have done something wrong." Josiah looked at her in the starlight. "You have been thinking about this." 47 days is a long time to think," she answered. They rode on. Levi dropped back again and returned with a name. "It is Carl Ducker from the livery. Works for Slade now." "Ducker is harmless," Maeve said. Nettie disagreed. "Harmless men stop being harmless when you pay them enough." "Hands." "You need some rest," he told her. "I can't. You have to be ready when we reach Selena." "I'm always ready," she said, her voice flat. "It is not pride. It is how I stay alive." She got up, brushing her hands on her skirt. "Josiah?" "Yes?" "Why did your wife choose that chestnut mare?" The question surprised him. "Sarah liked her eyes. She said they were kind for a horse." He paused. "She was right. Copper is the first creature that did not pull away from my touch." Nettie grew quiet. "Your wife sounds like she saw the good in things." "She was good at everything," he said softly. "I am sorry for your loss." "And I for yours." For a moment, they were just 2 people in the dark who knew the heavy weight of grief. Levi stepped out of the shadows. "Ducker's made camp about a quarter-mile back. He is done following for the night." "He does not have to," Nettie said. "He already knows our destination." They watered the horses and pushed on, riding straight through till morning. They were 10 miles from Selena when the sun came up. Nettie had finally slept, the journal held tight to her chest. A deep rut in the road jolted her awake. "How much farther?" she asked, instantly aware. We are close. We will get there before the courthouse opens." Nettie tried to smooth her worn-out dress. Maeve had offered her a change of clothes, but Nettie had refused. "I want the judge to see what 47 days of captivity looks like," she had explained. They rolled into town as folks were starting their day and stopped right in front of the courthouse. The four of them stood on the steps, watching the sunrise. "No matter what happens in there," Nettie announced, "I want y'all to know this was my choice. I am here because my mother left me something worth fighting for, and my father tried to take it. I would rather lose this fight in a courtroom than win by staying silent." "You are not going to lose," Levi said with certainty. "You cannot promise me that." "No," he admitted. "But I can promise I will be standing right beside you. So will Maeve, and so will Josiah." Just then the courthouse doors swung open. "Judge before a man named Emmett Slade can." The clerk eyed her bandaged wrists and the worn journal in her hands. He took in the three tired but determined people standing behind her. "Come on inside," he finally said. They followed him in a line. Nettie walked first, her back straight, and her wrapped wrists catching the morning sun. Behind her came Maeve, Levi, and Josiah. They were four people from Abilene who rode all night for a young woman who refused to spend another day in chains. And far behind them, Carl Ducker was already riding hard for Abilene to tell Harlan Calloway, his daughter, had just entered a place where his locks and keys meant nothing at all. The clerk, Howard Marsh, led them to a small room with a long table. Nettie laid out the journal. Then she placed the three signed statements next to it, along with her own list of her father's debts. She arranged them all carefully, making a fortress out of paper. "The circuit judge is Arthur Waverly," the clerk said. "He starts at 8 o'clock. Has anyone else filed this morning?" Nettie asked. Marsh paused. "A Mr. Slade filed a motion late yesterday afternoon for a competency review. It is scheduled for Thursday." "Yesterday," Nettie echoed, looking at Josiah. "He filed before we even left town. He knew Puit was gone." Maeve spoke up. "Can we file our petition before that hearing?" "You can file whatever you like," Marsh replied. "Whether the judge sees it first is his decision." When he left, Nettie opened the journal to the last page. Her mother's final words were written in a fading, shaky hand. "What does it say?" Levi asked. Nettie's voice was clear as she read it out loud. "April 14th, 1874. Harlan came home at 3 in the morning. He told me if I ever tried to leave, he would make sure Nettie never did either. I believe him. I am hiding this journal tonight. If anything happens, Nettie will know where it is. She is smarter than he thinks." No one said a word. "That was 4 years ago," Nettie said quietly. "She died 6 months later." The door opened and Judge Arthur Waverly walked in. He was a man with sharp eyes that got straight to the point. He held a folder and a coffee cup. "I have a competency motion here from an Emmett Slade." Judge Waverly took his seat without so much as a howdy. "I've got emptied Slade for Harlan Calloway," he announced, his voice like gravel. "And 4 folks from Abilene who rode all night. Somebody better tell me why I ought to listen to you first." Nettie stood right up. "Because this whole competency claim is a lie, Your Honor. My own father filed it to stop me from talking about how he forced me to sign over my property. He locked me in a root cellar for 47 days. She held up her wrists, showing the faint scars. "I've got my mother's journal filled with years of his abuse, and I have sworn statements from 3 witnesses. That ought to be enough proof." Waverly looked from her wrist to the papers, then straight into her eyes. "Sit down, Miss Calloway. You start at the beginning, and you tell me everything." Nettie sat, and she told him. For 30 minutes the story poured out of her, not with tears, but with cold, hard facts. It was a story she had practiced in the dark for what felt like a lifetime. When she pointed out the pages in the journal, the judge read every word. He read the list of her father's debts. "This list," he finally said, looking up. "How in the world did you get all this?" "My father talks to himself when he's drinking," she answered. "He'd sit right over the cellar door, going over his books out loud. I had nothing else to do but memorize it all." You remembered all those names and numbers while you were trapped underground? The judge asked, leaning back in his chair. I had 47 days, she repeated. Nothing to do but listen and remember. Judge Waverly steepled his fingers. All right, Miss Calloway, I'm going to be plain with you. Mr. Slade's motion here says you're suffering from melancholy and can't manage your own affairs. It's backed up by a doctor from Selena, a Franklin Poole, who claims you're unstable based on what your father told him. That doctor has never once laid eyes on me, Nettie said, her voice firm. He's willing to declare me crazy on the word of the very man who locked me away. The judge's jaw set tight. The law allows for family testimony. It's a part of the law I've never cared for, but it's there. Then you test me, Nettie challenged, leaning forward. Right here, right now. Ask me anything you want. You'll see soon enough if I'm incompetent. And if I'm not, then that doctor's note is just a paid-for lie. The room fell silent. Waverly studied her for a long moment, then called for his clerk. Go get Dr. Harmon. Tell him I need an independent examination done today. When the clerk hesitated, the judge's voice was sharp. Today, Howard. Then he stood. We'll take a recess. Miss Calloway, you and your friends stay right here. Mr. Slade is due in my court at 2 o'clock. I expect he'll find out you're in town. Best be ready. And sure enough, not long after, the door flew open. In walked EMT Slade, moving like he owned the place, a slick smile on his face. But the real surprise was the man behind him, Harlan Calloway. Nettie shot up from her chair so fast it screeched against the floor. Her friends Josiah, Maeve, and Levi all moved to stand with her. Miss Calloway, Slade said, smooth as butter. What a surprise. Get him out of here, Nettie said, her eyes fixed on her father. There's a restraining order. He's not supposed to be within 100 feet of me. That order's for Dickinson County, Slade shot back. We're in Saline County, a different jurisdiction. That's just a technicality, she said. Slade just smiled. The law is full of them, Miss Calloway. That's what makes it so useful. Harlan finally spoke, his voice soft. He was all cleaned up, wearing his good coat, looking almost respectable. Nettie, he said, I just want to talk to you. You had 47 days to talk, she replied, her voice cold as ice. You spent 'em locking me in. I was trying to protect you, he pleaded. You were trying to steal from me. Slade held up a hand. Let me handle this. Miss Calloway, your father is willing to make you an offer. He'll drop this whole competency business and his claim on the water rights. All you have to do is return the land deed and forget about any criminal charges. The room got real quiet. He wants the land back, Nettie said slowly. And he wants me to pretend the cellar never happened. He wants to settle this as a family without a big public trial, Slade said. You mean without any consequences? Slade just shrugged. I'm offering you peace. Nettie turned to her father. Is that what you want, Father? Peace? I want my daughter back, Harlan said, his eyes getting watery. You never lost me, she shot back. You put me in a cage. There's a big difference. I made a mistake. I was drinking. You were being yourself, she cut him off. The drinking just took the mask off. Harlan's composure finally broke. Your mother would have wanted us to work this out. That was it. A fire ignited in Nettie's eyes. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare. Don't you dare say her name. She wrote about you every single night, every bruise, every threat. She hid that journal because she knew you and she trusted me to find it. You didn't know her. You owned her. And when she died, you just started trying to own me. Harlan stumbled back as if she'd slapped him. Slade tried to step in. Miss Calloway, getting emotional won't help you with the judge. That wasn't emotion, Mr. Slade, she said. That was my testimony. Just then the door opened. Judge Waverly walked in, and with him was an older gentleman carrying a medical bag. Dr. William Harmon, the most respected physician in Selena. The judge's eyes fell on Harlan and Slade. Mr. Slade, I don't recall sending for you. I came to help resolve things, Your Honor. You came to intimidate a witness in my courthouse, Waverly said, his voice hard. Mr. Calloway, there is a restraining order against you. I don't care what county it's from. You will wait outside, or I'll have you thrown out. When Slade started to protest, the judge just said, "Outside, now." Harlan gave Nettie one last look before turning to leave. Slade paused at the door. "The offer is still on the table." "No," Nettie said firmly. "It's not." After they left, Judge Waverly introduced Dr. Harmon. "Doctor, I need you to perform a mental competency exam on Miss Calloway. Take all the time you need. I want your honest professional opinion." "I don't give any other kind, Arthur," Dr. Harmon replied. He turned to Nettie. "Miss Calloway, would you like to do this in private?" "No," she said, looking straight at him. "I want everyone here to listen. I want it all on the record." The doctor nodded and sat down. For the next hour, he asked her everything. He tested her memory, her reasoning, and her knowledge of the law and her own business. He had her count backward and explain complicated ideas. Nettie answered every question with the same clear-headed strength she'd had since she first walked in. When he was done, Dr. Harmon packed his bag, stood up, and faced the judge. "This woman is not incompetent. She is not suffering from any condition that would affect her judgment. In my professional opinion, she has one of the sharpest minds I have had the privilege to examine this year." He paused, then added, "And whoever signed that affidavit without ever meeting her ought to be run out of the medical profession." Judge Waverly nodded slowly. "Thank you, Doctor. That will be entered into the official record." As he was leaving, Dr. Harmon tipped his hat to Nettie. "That girl doesn't need a competency hearing," he said to the judge. "She needs justice. Model, table." He looked directly at Nettie. "Miss Calloway, based on your mother's journal, 3 witness statements, and the clear evidence of restraint on your wrists, I am issuing the following orders. First, Mr. Slade's motion is denied. Second, the deed transfer for the 40 acres is void. Third, the water rights filed by your mother remain in your name. Fourth, I am referring the matter of your imprisonment to the U.S. Marshal's office for a criminal investigation." "And my father?" Nettie asked. "Your father will be arrested, Miss Calloway. The wheels of justice turn slow, but they do turn." Nettie closed her eyes for a brief moment. When she opened them, her gaze was clear. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Do not thank me," the judge said. "Thank your mother. She built this case from beyond the grave. You simply delivered it." He gathered his papers and left. The door clicked shut, leaving the 4 of them at a table now covered in victory. Maeve was the first to move, pulling Nettie into a hug. "Your mother would be so proud," Maeve whispered. "My mother would be angry it took so long," Nettie whispered back. Josiah and Levi stood near the door, saying nothing. Some things do not need words from men, just their presence. When Maeve released her, Nettie picked up the journal, holding it to her chest. "We should head home," she said. "To Abilene?" Levi asked. "To Josiah's ranch for now," she said, looking at him. "If the offer still stands." "It still stands." They walked out into the bright sun. Slade was standing across the street, his arms crossed. He watched them load the wagon, but did not move or speak. "He will appeal," Nettie said as Josiah helped her up. "Let him," Josiah answered. "He will find another loophole, and we will be ready for him." Nettie looked down at him. "You really believe that, do you not?" "I believe I saw you make a circuit judge listen. I believe you outsmarted a lawyer twice your age. And I believe your mother knew her daughter would be strong enough to use that journal." Josiah climbed up beside her. "Yes, I believe it. Believe it." They rode out of Selena around noon, the road back home long and hot. About halfway there, Levi rode up beside the wagon, Ryder coming toward us. Josiah's hand went to his rifle, but Nettie stopped him. "Wait." The rider got closer. It was a man on a tall black horse wearing a star on his chest. But it was not Sheriff Briggs. He pulled up beside them. Miss Calloway? That is me. I am Deputy United States Marshal James Beckett. Judge Waverly sent me ahead. I am on my way to Abilene with an arrest warrant for Harlan Calloway. Nettie gripped the journal tightly. He is dangerous when he is cornered. Most men are, ma'am. That is why they sent me instead of a letter. Beckett looked at Josiah. You must be the rancher, Josiah Crane. Waverly said you opened a door for her. That is all I did. Beckett almost smiled. Sometimes that is enough. He tipped his hat and rode on toward Abilene, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Nettie watched him go. Her shoulders slumped just a little, not in defeat, but in the first quiet breath of a woman starting to believe she might finally be free. Josiah, she said, yes? Thank you for opening the door. He just nodded and drove the wagon west, toward home. Marshal Beckett got to Abilene just before the sun went down. A rider caught up to Josiah's wagon about 2 hours outside of town. Marshal arrested Harlan, the rider, Pete Holmes said, breathing hard. But it was not a clean arrest. Nettie sat up straight. What happened? Harlan locked himself in the house. The marshal gave him 1 hour to come out. When the hour was up, Harlan came out holding a rifle. Josiah stopped the wagon. Did he shoot? No. He put the rifle down and got on his knees. But he was yelling the whole time, telling anyone who would listen that his daughter was a thief and that Josiah Crane had stolen her just to get her land. And did people listen? Maeve asked. Pete shifted in his saddle. Some of them did. A few men were nodding along with him. But then Mrs. Aldrich came out of her house. She walked right up to Harlan as the marshal was putting the cuffs on him. She said, I heard her screaming for 47 nights, and you can call me a liar. The whole street went silent after that. Nettie closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression was not one of relief. It was one of pure resolve. Where is he now? In jail. Beckett is holding him for the federal transport to Topeka. Briggs tried to stop it, said it was a local matter. Nettie was quiet for the long stretch of the ride. Josiah let the silence be. Maeve and Levi rode alongside them, giving them space. When they were just a mile from the ranch, Nettie finally spoke. He will try to get a message to me from the jail. He will say he is sorry. He will say he needs me. You do not have to listen, Josiah said. I know. But I have to decide what to do when it happens. Her jaw grew tight. Because a part of me still remembers the man he was. He used to carry me on his shoulders down to the river. He taught me how to ride. He built a bookshelf for me. Her voice was barely a whisper. The man who locked me in that cellar is not the same man who built that shelf. But they live in the same skin, and I do not know how to hate one of them without hating them both. Josiah did not offer easy words. He had lost Sarah, and he knew time did not heal a wound like that. It just taught you how to carry the weight of it. You do not have to figure all that out tonight, he told her. I know, she said, but I have had 47 days of nothing but thinking, and I still do not have an answer. They got back to the ranch after the sun had set. Josiah helped Nettie from the wagon. For a few minutes, no one spoke. They just stood under the big Texas sky, listening to the sounds of the night. They sat on the porch in the dark, sipping coffee without saying much. Finally, Nettie broke the silence, her hands wrapped tight around her cup. Tomorrow I'm fixin' to do something, she said. I'm going back to my mother's house. Maeve looked worried. Nettie, he's in jail, but... Nettie cut her off. It's not about him. I ran from that place for 47 days. If I don't walk through that door on my own terms, it'll own me just like he did. No one said a word against it. I'll go by myself, she added. Like heck you will, all three of them answered at once. Nettie let out a small, rusty laugh. The next morning she rode ahead, stopping at the fence line. She walked to the door and just stood there for a minute, her hand on the latch. Then she pushed it open and stepped inside. Everyone held their breath for what felt like 20 long minutes. When she came out, her face was streaked with tears, but her shoulders were square. She held a little wooden box. My mother's things, she explained, her voice steady. And this, she pulled out a folded paper from a bundle of cloth. The real deed to the water rights. Mama sewed it inside her winter coat. Maeve was stunned. She hid it right under his nose. Looked like she was keeping house, but she was building a war chest. Nettie looked away from the house. "I want to go home," she said, then corrected herself. "To the ranch. I don't really have a home." Josiah spoke up right then. "You do now, for as long as you need." She mounted her horse and didn't look back. 2 days later, Deputy Marshal Beckett showed up and got straight to business. "Your father's headed to Topeka for trial. Judge Waverly voided that deed transfer, so the water rights are yours. And Sheriff Briggs quit," he went on. "That lawyer Slade took off on the noon stage. Seems like defending a man like your father is bad for business, and Dr. Poole is being looked at by the medical board." Nettie took it all in. "So, it's over." Beckett tipped his hat. "The legal part is. The rest is up to you, ma'am." After he rode off, Josiah asked her, "What do you want to come next?" For the first time in a long while, Nettie let herself take her time thinking. "I want to rebuild my mother's place," she said finally. "Fix it up, plant her garden, make it right again." "That's a heap of work," he said. "I know how to work," she replied. "And I'm going to use those water rights like Mama wanted. To help all the ranches downstream, not to hurt 'em. Share the water, fair and square." Josiah just nodded, understanding. "It's not about being popular," she said. "It's about doing right by my mother and this community." The weeks that followed were filled with good hard work. Nettie was out at her mother's property from sunup to sundown, mending what was broken. She wasn't running from anything now. She was building something. Levi started showing up every other day with supplies, and he'd stay to help with the heavy lifting. He was a quiet fella, but he asked gentle questions. One afternoon, she just had to ask him, "Why do you keep coming all the way out here?" Levi put his hammer down. "Because you need a hand." "Plenty of folks need a hand," she countered. "You don't ride 2 hours for all of 'em." He looked her straight in the eye. "No, ma'am, I don't." A silent understanding passed between them. A little later, when he handed her a board, their fingers brushed for just a second. Of course, Maeve noticed. She came over one evening and sat with Nettie on the porch. "My boy likes you," she said, plain and simple. "I know." "Well, do you like him?" Maeve pressed on. Nettie took a long pause before she answered. "He's kind. He never flinched. He just stood nearby and let me find my own way back into the light." Maeve fought a smile and lost. "Well, that's the best thing I've ever heard said about my son." Nettie let out a real warm laugh for the first time. About a month later, a letter came in the mail. It was from her father. She sat on the porch of her now freshly painted house, the garden just starting to sprout, and held it for a long time. She told Josiah she had to read this one by herself. The handwriting inside was shaky. It was a short letter, and it said he was sorry. He wrote about the good memories, about the man he used to be, and said he didn't expect to be forgiven, only that he was ashamed. Nettie read it, folded it carefully, and placed it in the wooden box with her mother's things. She didn't tear it up, and she didn't cry. When Josiah came back to the porch, she told him, "He says he's sorry." "You believe him?" Josiah asked. "I believe he means it for today. I don't know if that's enough, but maybe someday it will be." When fall came, her garden gave its first harvest. She took a basket of tomatoes and squash to Maeve, who just looked at her, and pulled her into a long, strong hug. Sometime later, Judge Puit stopped by to say Harlan had pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 5 years. The water rights were officially filed in Nettie's name, permanent and safe for good. Puit told her, "Your mother would be so proud." Nettie knew it was true, but she ached that her mama was not there to see it all. Puit understood that kind of lingering hurt and gave her a quiet nod before he left. That evening, Levi came by for supper, just as he had most nights. He carried a heavy stack of firewood and a jar of his mother's peach preserves. After a quiet meal, Josiah made a polite excuse about checking the horses, giving the two young folks the porch to themselves. In the cool night air, Levi finally spoke. "I need to ask you something." He wanted to take her to the harvest dance. She said yes before he could even get the whole question out. For the first time in 4 long years, Nettie felt something new. It was not just the safety she had found at the ranch or the justice from that courtroom. It was freedom. The quiet kind, the kind that comes from choosing right where you want to stand, and knowing the door behind you swings both ways. From the barn, Josiah watched them. He thought about his Sarah, about a cellar door, and about 47 marks scratched into a wooden post. He had gone to town for fencing wire and come home with a righteous fight he could not turn away from. Maeve had been right. He was not the kind of man who could look away from a wrong. That Saturday, the harvest dance was full of life. Nettie wore a simple blue cotton dress Maeve had sewn for her. Levi had polished his boots until they shone in the lamplight. As they danced, Mrs. Aldrich watched with happy tears rolling down her cheeks. Josiah stood near the back, just taking it all in, when Maeve came to stand beside him. "You did a good thing, Josiah Crane," she said softly. "All I did was open a door," he replied. She smiled a little. "Sometimes that is exactly what a good thing looks like." Nettie's laugh rang out clear as a bell across the room. Miles away in a federal jail, Harlan Calloway sat in silence, counting his own days one by one. But Nettie was not counting anymore. The door was open for good. The life ahead of her was not one she was given, but one she had earned, one hard day at a time. Now, if this story touched your heart, I hope you will like this video and subscribe to the channel. Please leave a comment and tell me which part of this tale stayed with you the longest. We gather these stories and tell them with care, believing that no matter how long you have been counting in the dark, it only takes one person willing to open a door to let the light back in. Thanks for listening, y'all model. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.